Put yourself in position to win big on Kentucky Derby Day with the power of daily racing form. Visit shop.drf.com and get past performances, expert picks, betting strategies, clock reports, and more. Again, that's shop.drf.com. Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer. Post positions have been drawn for the 2023 Kentucky Derby. 20 have entered in the body of the race, 3 also eligibles. Let's take a look at who drew where in your morning line favorite, last year's 2-year-old champion Forte. I think Todd Pletcher and Arad Ortiz have to be pleased, Mike, with post position 15. 3 of the last 10 Derby winners have broke from post 15, and Forte has that sort of ability where now he can sort of stay out of trouble a bit.
Yeah, they don't really have anything to complain about with where Forte is drawn, Dan. It seems like a pretty good spot for him. The first thing that jumped out to me was Pletcher's other horse, who I think is going to take a lot of money in here, Tapitrice. He's got the 5. I don't know if being, down towards the inside in the big field is the best thing for him.
I think it's a very good point. We've talked about it a few times on the road to the Kentucky Derby. If you watch this horse's recent races, whether it's the Tampa Bay Derby or the Bluegrass, he just doesn't seem very comfortable when he is down inside and behind horses. Once he gets to the outside in the clear and is able to unfurl that long stride, that's when he seems most comfortable. Luis Saez might have his work cut out from post 5, as they have a quarter of a mile down the stretch before they get into the first turn. And all these horses on the outside are going to try to maneuver their way in, perhaps putting the squeeze on the inner horses.
Yeah, there's usually a lot of traffic heading to that first turn. We'll see how it plays out this year. Of course, you always have to remind yourself, Dan, that traffic and trouble in a race like this can find you from any post position. So it's not, if you draw down towards the inside, I know a lot of trainers don't like to be down there, but it's not, like it's a death sentence or anything. You just have to try to work out a trip. You can get trouble on the inside. You can get trouble on the outside. All you can do is hope for a clean trip in this race.
Right next door to Tapitrice is Pletcher's third entrant. That's the number 6, Kings Barnes. He is unbeaten. He is also very inexperienced. This post position I'm not sure about, Mike. He does have tactical speed where if he breaks, he can get in good position, but he is so inexperienced. He's going to have a crush of horses sort of, again, trying to get inside, and maybe he'll get stuck in a bit of a pickle. I'm a little worried about the 6 for Kings Barnes.
I mean, that could certainly happen. We'll see. At least in the case of Kings Barnes, so far in his career anyway, Dan, he's been good from the gate, and he's been, pretty adaptable. So, I don't know if I would worry that much about where he is. I thought outside of Tapitrice, who, I guess being inside could be a problem for him. The 2 horses that I really feel like didn't draw great were the 2 verifying, because I don't think being inside for a horse like him, I think he's going to need, I really like him as a horse. I think he's going to need the right trip, though, if he's going to be effective going 1.25 miles, and being in post 2 might mean they have to go early in this race. And I'm not sure if that will work out. The other one for me is Madge, the number 8. He's going to have a bunch of horses to his outside being drawn in hole 8, Dan, and he does not get out of the gate in his races.
The break is the key for Mage. If he does not break very well, he could wind up in behind a ton of horses with getting a lot of dirt kicked into his face. It would really hurt his chances. I think he hit the nail on the head with verifying. He's a horse that does have speed, but if he is forced to go from post position 2, there's a chance he could get hooked up in a really solid pace. And you mentioned the 1.25 miles being a bit of a question mark. Speaking of pace, the number 12, Jace's Road, is expected to be one of the pace setters. I think we could probably now mention verifying as a likely pace source. Confidence Game is versatile. I think he's going to get close. I think they're going to get aggressive with both the 6 and the 7 as well.
Yeah, it'll be, the 7s are a really tough call. I think you're probably right that they'll go forward with them in here at a big price. I'm still not sure how good that horse is, but he does have plenty of speed. The 8 Mage is maybe the whole key to this pace, Dan, because I feel like they would want to be forward if they can get him out of the gate here. We'll see if that happens for him. But you're right. I mean, Jace's Road, he kind of feels like the one horse most people have sort of zeroed in on as the pace of this race, and it's hard to argue with that. He has plenty of speed. He has a common ownership with Angel of Empire, his stablemate, who wants something to run at in here. So I have a feeling Jace's Road is just on ascend here.
Although post position 17 has not been good, 0 for 43 in the Kentucky Derby, I think it's a nice post for Derma Sotogake, the Japanese-trained winner of the UAE Derby, because he showed speed in the UAE Derby. He also showed the ability to sit in Japan. And from this post, Christophe Lemaire can break and just sort of take up a position and keep an eye on everybody to his inside.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I like him being drawn out there. He is a horse. Listen, maybe they, after the UAE Derby, they'll just decide that they want to be aggressive with him because he was pretty impressive on the lead in that race. But as you've already mentioned, Dan, they don't have to ride him that way. He's perfectly comfortable sitting off horses.
A lot has been made of the rail just being a terrible, terrible spot in the Derby. I believe Ferdinand was the last winner from post 1, 1986. How does it affect Hit Show, if at all?
I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't want to be down there. Personally, it's not something that I would worry about too much, especially when the horse is the price that Hit Show is on the morning line. It's just, to me, it's not that big a deal. He is going to need to work out a trip, but he's another horse. He's not going to be looking to go forward from the start in this race anyway. I don't think they want to be, too far back in the field, Dan, but he wasn't looking to go forward anyway. We'll see if he can work something out from there. I think he's an interesting horse regardless.
I think the connections have to be pleased with the 10 for Practical Move, because he's the kind of horse that if he breaks can just put his rider anywhere within the context of a race flow. I think the 14 Angel of Empire drew well, even though post 14 hasn't won the Derby since 1961. I think he's just going to let the pace go and try to come with a big wide sweeping move on the second turn. No problems for me with the 10 and the 14 for Practical Move and Angel of Empire.
Trip's going to be really important for Angel of Empire. It certainly seems like he's a horse who's good enough to win this race, Dan, if he can find one. I think you're right. Post 14 is good for him. Practical Move, it's very interesting. I can't argue with the post he's drawn. He's looked pretty good, actually, winning his last 3 starts around 2 turns. But perfect trips in every one of those races. Will he get another one?
3 horses on the also eligible list. The 21 just didn't make the cut. Cyclone Mischief, of course, last year's Kentucky Derby was won by a horse on the also eligible list, Rich Strike. So you got to keep your eye out for scratches in the weeks and days leading up to the Kentucky Derby, in the weekend days leading up to the Kentucky Derby. Mandarin Hero, second in the San Diego Derby's 22. King Russell will need several scratches in order to play. 20 horses in the body of the Kentucky Derby. Forte, the 2-year-old champion, the morning line favorite at 3-1, and post 15 has done very, very well, won 3 of the last 10 Kentucky Derbies.